The fluorescent lights of Zenith Innovations. Boston headquarters buzzed softly as Daniel Walsh pushed a cleaning cart through the sleek, glass-walled labs. At 40, Daniel was a single father with a quiet strength, his broad shoulders stooped from years of hard work. His worn janitor's uniform hid a silver locket tucked beneath his shirt, a keepsake from his late sister, Anna, who'd raised him after their parents died. The locket, engraved with "Forever Family" and a tiny star, was his anchor, a reminder of the love he now poured into his 14-year-old daughter, Sophie. Daniel hummed an old folk tune Anna had taught him, the melody cutting through the sterile silence of the biotech firm's labs. His night shift was solitary, a chance to think about Sophie's upcoming school recital. His phone buzzed with her text. "Dad, you're coming to my violin thing, right? Promise." He smiled, typing back. "Wouldn't miss it, kid. Practice hard." He adjusted the locket, its familiar weight grounding him as he scrubbed counters cluttered with test tubes and microscopes. The lab techs in their crisp white coats barely noticed him. One dropped a coffee cup near his cart, walking away without a glance. Daniel picked it up without complaint. He'd worked as a mechanic, a delivery driver, anything to keep Sophie fed after Anna's death from illness a decade ago. Zenith paid better than most, but the invisibility stung, not for him but for Sophie, who deserved a dad the world respected. He checked the time on a cheap wristwatch, saving the locket for special moments. Its star and violin engraving felt too personal to flash around. As he moved to the next lab, a memory flickered. Anna tucking the locket into his hand before she passed, whispering, "It's our story, Danny, keep it close." He never knew its full history, only that it came from their childhood in foster care. Shaking off the thought, he focused on his work. The night was young, and he had no idea a single encounter was about to turn his world upside down. Claire Thornton strode into Zenith Innovations' lobby, her tailored blazer and sharp heels announcing her presence. At 45, she was a billionaire CEO, her biotech empire built on breakthroughs in genetic research. Her icy blue eyes and clipped voice commanded respect, but beneath her polished exterior, a rare panic simmered. Her estranged father, Edward Thornton, a reclusive philanthropist, had announced a surprise visit to Boston for a family reunion, expecting to meet Claire's long-lost brother, Michael, whom she hadn't seen since childhood. Claire's assistant, Jenna, trailed her, clutching a tablet. "Miss Thornton, your father's arriving tomorrow. He's asking about Michael again." Claire's jaw tightened. "Tell him it's handled," she snapped, though her mind raced. Michael had vanished after a tragic accident when they were kids, leaving their family fractured. Edward's insistence on seeing him now threatened to expose Claire's carefully guarded facade. She needed a stand-in just for one day to keep her father's fragile hope alive. As she crossed the lobby, Claire spotted Daniel cleaning a glass door, his locket glinting as he reached up. Its star-shaped design sparked a memory. Her brother had worn a similar one, a gift from their mother. Her heart skipped. It couldn't be, but desperation clouded her judgment. She approached Daniel, her voice low. "Mr. Walsh, I need a favor. It's unusual." Daniel paused, mop in hand, his warm, brown eyes wary. "What kind of favor?" he asked. Claire hesitated, then blurted, "Pretend you're my brother for one day. For my father. He's coming tomorrow, and I can't disappoint him." Daniel's brow furrowed, the request absurd against the hum of the lab. Claire offered a sum of money that made his head spin, but her eyes betrayed something deeper, fear, maybe shame. Daniel touched his locket, thinking of Sophie. He didn't trust Claire, but her vulnerability tugged at him. "I'll think about it," he said, turning back to his work, leaving Claire staring after him, unsure if she'd just made a terrible mistake. Across town, Sophie Walsh sat in her high school's music room, her violin resting on her lap. At 14, she was all elbows and quiet determination, her dark hair pulled back as she practiced for her recital. Her dad's love for music, inherited from his sister, had shaped her, but school was a battleground. Her thrift store clothes and Daniel's janitor job made her a target for richer kids, whose parents worked at places like Zenith Innovations. During a break, a classmate, Mia, smirked as Sophie tuned her violin. "Your dad's cleaning floors while my mom's designing DNA, but he can't even afford a ticket to this recital." Sophie's cheeks burned, but she shot back. "He's coming, and he's got something cooler than your mom's lab, a locket that's like a family secret." The words slipped out, fueled by anger, but they silenced Mia's laughter. Sophie didn't know much about the locket, only that her dad wore it always, a silver star with a tiny violin etched on it. Later, Sophie overheard her music teacher mention that Claire Thornton, Zenith's CEO, would attend the recital as a donor. Her stomach knotted. The woman who bossed her dad around would see her play. Sophie wanted to shine to prove the Walshes were more than their circumstances. She texted Daniel, "You're still coming, right? Gotta make you proud." His reply was instant. "Always, Soph, you're my star." At home, Sophie found a school flyer about the recital featuring Claire's photo. She wondered what it was like to have that kind of power, so different from her dad's quiet life. But the locket nagged at her, a mystery she'd never fully explored. She resolved to ask Daniel about it, sensing it held a story that could make her recital speech unforgettable. Little did she know that locket was about to unravel a secret bigger than she could imagine. Daniel Walsh leaned against his cleaning cart in Zenith Innovations' empty break room, the hum of Boston's night traffic faint through the window. Claire Thornton's request echoed in his mind. "Pretend you're my brother for one day." It was absurd, something out of a bad movie, yet her desperate tone had caught him off guard. The billionaire CEO, always polished and untouchable, had looked almost human when she'd pleaded, her eyes betraying a fear Daniel didn't understand. She'd offered him $10,000, enough to cover Sophie's music lessons for a year, maybe even a new violin. But money wasn't why he hesitated. Daniel touched the locket under his shirt, its star-end violin engraving warm against his skin. It was his sister Anna's last gift, a symbol of their bond through a childhood in foster care. Pretending to be someone else's sibling felt like a betrayal of her memory. He pictured Sophie, her trusting eyes, and winced. She couldn't know about this charade. Claire had cornered him after his shift, her voice low but urgent. "My father's coming tomorrow, Daniel. He thinks Michael's alive, and I can't break his heart again." She explained her brother's disappearance after a childhood accident, her father's fragile hope. Daniel had listened, his heart heavy. He knew loss, Anna's death still haunted him, but lying wasn't his way. "I'll do it," he said finally, "but not for your money, for your dad, and Sophie doesn't find out." Claire nodded, relief washing over her face, but Daniel felt a knot tighten in his chest. As he locked up the lab, he opened the locket, staring at the faded photo of Anna inside. "What would you think of this mess?" he murmured. The star engraving glinted, stirring a vague memory of Anna saying it came from someone special before they were orphaned. He shook it off, pocketing the locket. He'd play Claire's game for one day, but he couldn't shake the feeling that this lie would unravel something bigger. Claire Thornton sat in her office, the Boston skyline a blur beyond her glass walls. Her desk was cluttered with reports on Zenith's latest gene editing trials, but her mind was elsewhere. Tomorrow's reunion with her father loomed, and the lie she'd roped Daniel into felt like a house of cards. She built her empire on control, but this, pretending a janitor was her brother Michael, felt like a gamble she couldn't afford to lose. She pulled up an old family photo on her laptop, her, Michael, and their parents smiling at a Cape Cod beach. Michael, only 10, had vanished after a car accident that scarred their family. Claire, 12 at the time, blamed herself. She distracted him, leading to the crash. Her father, Edward, had never stopped searching, clinging to hope. Now, his sudden visit to Zenith forced her to keep up the facade that Michael might be found. Claire's thoughts drifted to Daniel's locket, its star-end violin design eerily familiar. Her mother had given Michael a similar one, a custom piece from a Boston jeweler. Could it be a coincidence? She shook her head, dismissing the thought. Daniel was a janitor, not her brother. Still, his quiet strength, his refusal to take her money, had unsettled her. He wasn't like the sycophants she dealt with daily. Alone, Claire let her guard drop, her fingers tracing a scar on her wrist from that long-ago accident. Guilt gnawed at her. She'd built Zenith to honor her family, but had lost them in the process. Daniel's agreement to help, despite her coldness, stirred something she hadn't felt in years: hope. But hope was dangerous, and she couldn't afford to trust a stranger with her family's pain. Sophie Walsh sprawled across her bed, her room a mess of sheet music and second-hand books. Her violin rested in its case, but her focus was on her dad's jacket, slung over a chair. She'd been doing laundry when she found his locket, its silver star and tiny violin catching the light. She'd seen it 1,000 times, but something about it felt different now, like a puzzle waiting to be solved. With her recital looming, she wanted to weave its story into her performance. She grabbed her laptop, searching for the locket's design. A jewelry forum mentioned a rare Boston jeweler from the 1970s who crafted custom pieces with star motifs for a wealthy family. The description matched her dad's locket down to the violin engraving. Sophie's pulse quickened. Could it be tied to someone important? She texted Daniel, "Dad, where'd your locket come from? It's super cool." His reply was vague. "Just Anna's old thing, Soph. Focus on your recital." Frustrated, Sophie dug deeper, finding a digitized newspaper clipping about a missing boy from a prominent Boston family, the Thorntons, who'd owned a similar locket. The name Thornton rang a bell. Claire Thornton, Zenith's CEO, was judging her recital. Was there a connection? Sophie decided to make her recital speech about the locket, hoping to surprise her dad and impress Claire. She sketched the star design in her notebook, her mind buzzing with possibilities. As she practiced her violin, the notes felt like a bridge to her dad's past. She didn't know what she'd uncover, but the locket was more than a keepsake. It was a key to something big, maybe even a way to show the world her dad was more than a janitor. Daniel met Claire in Zenith's empty conference room after hours, the city lights glinting through the windows. She prepared a dossier on her family, photos, anecdotes, even Michael's favorite foods, to help Daniel play her brother convincingly. He scanned the pages, his jaw tight. Pretending to be someone else felt wrong, but Claire's story about her father's hope had swayed him. He thought of Sophie, how he'd do anything to protect her dreams. Claire coached him stiffly, her voice clipped. "Michael loved sailing. Say you've been on boats." Daniel nodded, then added, "I used to sail with my sister Anna on a lake." Claire froze, her eyes narrowing. Michael liked lakes too. The coincidence hung in the air, and they shared an awkward laugh, the tension easing. Daniel's warmth put Claire at ease, but his humming, a tune her mother used to sing, made her heart lurch. When the locket slipped from Daniel's shirt, Claire's breath caught. "Where did you get that?" she asked, her voice sharp. Daniel tucked it away, his tone guarded. "My sister gave it to me. She said it was from our family before we were split up." Claire's mind raced. The violin engraving matched her memory of Michael's locket. She dismissed it as wishful thinking but couldn't shake the unease. "Let's focus," she said, her voice softer now. As they parted, Daniel felt the weight of the lie growing. Claire's vulnerability made her seem less like the untouchable CEO, but the locket's mystery nagged at him. He didn't know it yet, but Sophie's curiosity was about to unravel everything he thought he knew about his past. Sophie Walsh sat in the dim glow of her laptop, the cluttered bedroom around her fading as she scrolled through a digital archive of Boston newspapers. Her violin rested nearby, but her focus was on the locket she'd found in her dad's jacket. Its silver star and tiny violin engraving had sparked her curiosity, and now, with her recital looming, she was determined to uncover its story for her performance speech. The search led her to a 1970s article about a missing boy, Michael Thornton, from a wealthy Boston family. The article mentioned a custom locket, a star with a violin, given to him by his mother before he vanished after a car accident. Sophie's heart raced. The Thorntons were linked to Zenith Innovations, where her dad worked, and Claire Thornton, the CEO, was judging her recital. Could the locket connect her dad to Claire's family? She cross-referenced the jeweler's mark from a forum, confirming it matched the article's description. The boy, Michael, was 10 when he disappeared, the same age her dad had been when he and his sister Anna entered foster care. Sophie's mind spun with possibilities. Could her dad know something about the Thorntons? She texted Daniel, "Dad, the locket S from a fancy Boston family. Is it really just Anna S?" His reply was curt. "Soph, it's old family stuff. Focus on your music." But Sophie wasn't buying it. Her dad was always vague about his childhood, and the locket felt like a key to a bigger story. She decided to weave her findings into her recital speech, hoping to surprise him and maybe catch Claire's attention. If the locket was tied to Zenith's CEO, it could change how people saw her dad. Not just a janitor, but someone with a past worth knowing. As she scribbled notes, Sophie felt a mix of excitement and nerves. The recital was tomorrow, and Claire Thornton would be there. This was her chance to shine, to make her dad proud, and maybe to uncover a truth that could rewrite their lives. Claire Thornton stood in her office, staring at an old photo of her brother Michael, his locket glinting in the sunlight. The rehearsal with Daniel Walsh had left her unsettled. His humming of their mother's folk tune, his easy laugh, even the way he tilted his head, it all felt hauntingly familiar. She dismissed it as coincidence, but the locket he wore, with its star and violin, gnawed at her. It was too similar to the one her mother had given Michael before the accident that tore their family apart. She coached Daniel for tomorrow's reunion dinner, teaching him Michael's quirks, his love for sailing, his habit of tapping his foot. But Daniel's own stories slipped through. A childhood by a lake, a sister who loved music. Each detail pricked at Claire's memories, stirring guilt she'd buried for years. She'd been driving when the accident happened, a reckless moment at 12 that sent Michael running from the wreckage. They never found him, and her father, Edward, had clung to hope ever since. Claire called Daniel to her office, her voice softer than usual. "Tell me about your sister," she said, watching him closely. Daniel leaned against the doorframe, his janitor's uniform rumpled. "Anna raised me after we lost our parents. She gave me the locket, said it was from our family before foster care." His voice was steady, but his hand brushed the locket protectively. Claire's heart thudded. "What was your family name?" she pressed. Daniel shrugged. "Walsh, as far as I know." "Anna didn't talk much about before." Claire nodded, her mind racing. It couldn't be him. Her brother was gone, not a janitor cleaning her labs, but doubt crept in, and with it, a flicker of hope she hadn't felt in decades. She let Daniel go, but his humming lingered, a melody that tied her to a past she'd tried to forget. Tomorrow's dinner would test her lie, and maybe her heart. The Zenith Innovations dining hall glowed with soft lighting, transformed for Edward Thornton's reunion dinner. Daniel Walsh, dressed in a borrowed suit, sat beside Claire, playing the role of Michael with a quiet grace that surprised her. Edward, frail but warm, clasped Daniel's hand, tears in his eyes. "You look just like her." His voice trembled, referring to their late mother. Daniel smiled, sticking to the script, but his heart ached. He was lying to a grieving father. Sophie arrived, invited to perform a short violin piece before dinner. She spotted her dad at the head table, sitting with Claire and Edward, and froze. Why was he with the CEO's family? Her confusion deepened as she played, her notes flawless but her mind racing. After her performance, she pulled Daniel aside in a quiet corner. "Dad, what's going on? Why are you with them?" Her voice shook, hurt flashing in her eyes. Daniel's stomach dropped. "Soph, it's just a favor for Miss Thornton," he whispered, glancing at Claire, who was distracted by guests. "I'm pretending to be her brother for her dad, just for tonight." Sophie's face fell, betrayal cutting deep. "You're lying to them, to me?" Before he could explain, Edward approached, his gaze landing on Daniel's locket, visible above his tie. "Where did you get that?" Edward asked, his voice sharp with recognition. Claire, overhearing, joined them, her eyes locking on the locket. The star-end violin design was unmistakable, her mother's gift to Michael. The room seemed to shrink as Edward's voice trembled. "That was my son's." Daniel looked between them, confused, as Sophie's anger turned to curiosity. Claire's face paled, the weight of her deception crashing down. The dinner was unraveling, and the truth, whatever it was closer than any of them realized. The high school auditorium buzzed with anticipation as Sophie Walsh stepped onto the stage, her violin tucked under her arm. The room was packed with parents, teachers, and Claire Thornton, seated in the front row as the guest donor. Sophie's heart pounded, not just from the performance, but from the speech she'd prepared about her dad's locket. After the dinner last night, where Edward Thornton recognized the locket, Sophie had stayed up late, piecing together her research. She was convinced it held a secret that could change everything. She played a haunting rendition of her Aunt Anna's favorite folk tune, the notes soaring with emotion. The audience leaned forward, captivated, but Sophie's nerves spiked as she set down her violin and stepped to the microphone. "This piece is for my dad, Daniel Walsh," she began, her voice steady despite her racing pulse. "And for this." She held up a projected image of the locket's star-end violin design, its silver glinting on the screen. "It's from a Boston family, the Thorntons, given to a boy named Michael who went missing decades ago." The crowd murmured and Claire's face paled, her eyes locked on the screen. Edward, seated beside her, gripped his cane, his breath catching. Sophie continued, her voice gaining strength. I found it in my dad's things. He got it from his sister Anna, who raised him in foster care. I think it means he's connected to you, Miss Thornton. She looked at Claire, then at her dad in the back, his face a mix of shock and pride. The auditorium erupted in whispers, and Claire stood, her hands trembling. That's my brother's locket, she said, her voice breaking. Edward nodded, tears in his eyes. Sophie's speech had turned her recital into a revelation, exposing the truth Daniel hadn't known he carried. As she stepped off the stage, the audience applauded, but her eyes were on her dad, who looked like the world had just shifted beneath him. Claire Thornton rushed backstage, her heels echoing as she found Daniel and Sophie in a quiet corner of the auditorium. Edward followed, his face a mix of hope and disbelief. The locket hung from Daniel's neck, its star and violin design undeniable under the stage lights. Daniel, Claire said, her voice raw, where did you get that locket? Her usual composure was gone, replaced by a desperate need for answers. Daniel's hand closed around the locket, his mind reeling. My sister Anna gave it to me when I was a kid. She said it was from our family before we were orphaned. He paused, his voice low. I was 10 when we went into foster care. Anna was all I had until she got sick. Claire's breath hitched, her eyes searching his face. Michael was 10 when he disappeared, she whispered. After a car accident, he was wearing that locket. Edward stepped forward, his voice trembling. My boy had a scar on his left wrist from falling off a bike. Daniel froze, then slowly rolled up his sleeve, revealing a faded scar. Claire gasped, tears spilling over. It's you, she said, her voice breaking. You're Michael. Daniel shook his head, overwhelmed. I don't remember any of that. I was just Daniel Walsh. Sophie hugged him, her eyes wide. Dad, you're their family. Claire proposed a DNA test to confirm it, and Daniel agreed, dazed but trusting Sophie's instincts. Hours later, at Zenith's lab, the results came back. A match. Daniel was Michael Thornton, lost for decades. Claire fell to her knees, sobbing, as Edward embraced Daniel, whispering, my son. Sophie beamed, her research having reunited a family she didn't know was hers. The Zenith Innovations boardroom, usually reserved for high-stakes deals, became a space of quiet celebration. Daniel, Claire, Edward, and Sophie sat together, the locket on the table between them, its star glinting like a beacon. The DNA test had confirmed Daniel as Michael Thornton, and the weight of that truth settled over them. Claire apologized, her voice thick with regret. I asked you to pretend, Daniel, because I was too scared to face the truth. I'm so sorry. Daniel, still processing, managed a small smile. You gave me a chance to find my family, Claire. I'd have never known. Edward shared stories of Michael's childhood, sailing trips, music lessons that stirred faint memories in Daniel. Sophie listened, her violin case at her side, proud of her role. I just wanted to make you proud, Dad, she said. Daniel hugged her tightly. You did more than that, Soph. Claire offered Daniel a role at Zenith, citing his resilience and instinct. You belong here, not just cleaning floors. Daniel chuckled, his humility unshaken. I'll take a part-time gig, but I'm keeping my mop. Keeps me grounded. The room laughed, the tension easing. Sophie grinned, already planning to teach Claire her aunt's folk tune. The locket, once a mystery, now bound them as family, its story complete. Daniel Walsh stood in the small kitchen of their Boston apartment, the scent of homemade spaghetti filling the air. The locket, once a mystery, hung around his neck, its star and violin engraving catching the evening light. A week had passed since the DNA test confirmed he was Michael Thornton, Claire's long-lost brother, and the world still felt surreal. Sophie, now 14 and brimming with confidence, set the table, her violin case propped nearby. Her recital performance and locket research had not only won her a music scholarship, but had reunited a family she hadn't known was hers. Daniel had accepted a part-time role at Zenith Innovations, consulting on lab equipment maintenance, his mechanical skills finally recognized. The extra income meant Sophie could join a summer music camp, but he insisted on keeping his janitor shifts. Keeps my feet on the ground, he told her, stirring the sauce. Sophie grinned, rolling her eyes. You're a Thornton now, Dad. You can afford to ditch the mop. But Daniel just chuckled, the locket a reminder of his roots with Anna, who'd raised him through hardship. Claire had visited earlier that day, a rare guest in their modest home. She brought a gift for Sophie, a professional-grade violin bow engraved with a tiny star. "For the girl who brought us back together," Claire had said, her usual CEO polish softened by a genuine smile. Sophie hugged her, calling her Aunt Claire, a title that made Claire's eyes glisten. As they ate, Claire shared stories of their childhood, helping Daniel piece together memories long buried, sailing with their father, their mother's folk tunes. The locket, now shared between them, felt like a bridge across decades. Sophie set up her violin after dinner, playing a few notes of Anna's tune. "This is for all of us," she said, her eyes on Daniel. He touched the locket, feeling Anna's presence in their new family. The apartment, once a place of struggle, now hummed with hope, proof that love and truth could rewrite even the hardest stories. Claire Thornton stood on the rooftop of Zenith Innovations, the Boston skyline sparkling under a clear August night. The success of their latest gene editing trial had secured new funding, but Claire's thoughts weren't on business. The locket's revelation, that Daniel was her brother Michael, had changed her more than any corporate victory. She'd spent years building walls, her guilt over the childhood accident that lost Michael fueling her drive. Now, with Daniel and Sophie in her life, those walls were crumbling, replaced by something warmer. Inspired by the Walshes, Claire had transformed Zenith. She launched a scholarship program for underprivileged teens, naming it after Sophie, and created a fund for employees facing personal struggles, thinking of Daniel's kindness to his coworkers. Her staff noticed the change. Her once-icy demeanor now carried a quiet warmth. She'd even started humming their mother's folk tune, a habit she hadn't realized she shared with Daniel. Tonight, Zenith hosted a community event, and Claire had invited Daniel and Sophie. They arrived, Daniel in his familiar jacket, the locket visible, and Sophie clutching her violin. Claire greeted them with a hug, ignoring the surprised glances from her executives. "This is my family," she said proudly, daring anyone to question it. Later, she pulled Daniel aside, her voice soft. "I was wrong to ask you to pretend, Michael. You gave me back my brother and so much more." Daniel smiled, his humility unshaken. "I'm still Daniel, Claire, but I'm glad we're together." The words eased a weight she'd carried for decades. Sophie, meanwhile, set up her violin on a small stage, dedicating her performance to Aunt Anna, Dad, and Aunt Claire. As her notes filled the night, Claire and Daniel stood together, the locket's star glinting between them. A spark of connection, familial, maybe something deeper, lingered in their shared glance, a promise of years to rebuild. Under the stars, Sophie's music wove their stories together, a melody of loss, truth, and hope. Claire knew this was just the beginning. A new family, a new way forward, all because of a janitor's locket and a girl's courage.